Okay, so have you ever watched a show, one that really changed television?
Oh,
Like a series that just, I don't know, made you question everything
definitely.
and gave us two agents who were just, well, totally iconic,
Right,
unforgettable.
absolutely. You know who we're talking about.
Yeah. Imagine, like, a world where the unexplained, it isn't just some campfire story,
Yeah.
right? Or some urban legend.
Not just whispers in the dark.
Exactly. But it's an actual FBI assignment.
Right.
Classified. A secret unit looking into cases that, well, they just defy logic.
Where the truth is always out there, kind of shrouded in shadows and conspiracy.
But they never, ever stop looking for it.
The pursuit never ends.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are plunging right into the very first season of The X-Files.
We really are. We're talking the genesis, the absolute beginning of a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, the season that introduced us to, Fox Mulder, the believer, and Dana Scully, the brilliant skeptic.
And it set the stage meticulously for 9 seasons of mystery, that pervasive paranoia.
And that search for truth, that relentless, sometimes so frustrating search that kept millions of us, well, glued to our TVs.
Absolutely glued.
So our mission today, what we're going to do is unpack a really comprehensive source. It's a detailed look at the X-Files Season 1, pulled from a well-known online encyclopedia.
And this material, it gives us this incredible behind-the-scenes look, doesn't it? How this groundbreaking show actually came together.
Totally. Its core themes, the unexpected challenges they faced making it, especially on Fox back then.
Right, a newer network environment. And how people reacted initially, the critics, the audience. It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. Our goal here for this deep dive is to pull out the most important bits of knowledge, the key insights from all this rich material.
We're going to explore the origins, which are maybe more diverse than you'd think.
And how they created and cast those unforgettable characters, that whole process.
And track how that unique narrative style developed, mixing the standalone mysteries with the bigger story.
The monster of the week versus the mythology.
Yeah.
And understand how it grabbed audiences right from day one.
Built that loyalty that honestly still exists today.
It does. So by the time we're done, you'll walk away with like a real shortcut to being super well-informed about the foundational season of The X-Files.
Yeah, you'll get the surprising facts, those aha moments.
Might even make you want to rewatch all 24 of those first episodes.
I wouldn't be surprised. So, yeah, buckle up.
It's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
All right, let's unpack this. How did The X-Files even start? I mean, it feels so intricate, right? So layered.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like something that just, poof, appeared fully formed. It had to brew, didn't it? Evolve.
You've definitely hit on something there. It wasn't an overnight thing, concept-wise, not at all. It started with Chris Carter.
Right.
Who, back in the early 90s, was actually getting pretty tired of working on comedies. For Walt Disney Pictures, believe it or not.
Huh. Comedies to X-Files? That's a leap.
It is. And he really wanted to produce something totally new, something dramatic for Fox, which was still kind of the new kid on the block then.
Okay.
And his inspiration, as our source lays out, wasn't just one thing. It was this confluence of different influences, almost like a perfect storm creating this unique vision.
Okay. Like what were the ingredients?
Well, first, classic TV. He was heavily influenced by that 70s horror series Kolchak, The Night Stalker.
Oh, yeah. Darren McGavin, the reporter investigating weird stuff.
Exactly. And of course, the legendary The Twilight Zone. You can really see echoes of Kolchak's like weekly monster format.
Right. Doubling onto something new each week.
Yeah, and The Twilight Zone's genius for those unsettling standalone stories, often with that deeper commentary,
Absolutely. Okay, so classic horror and sci-fi.
What else? This is where it gets really interesting and surprisingly grounded. Carter saw this report, a really shocking report, stating that 3.7 million Americans claim to have been abducted by aliens.
Oh, 3.7 million. That's staggering.
Isn't it? And he specifically cited that statistic, this very real public number, as the leaping off point for the whole X-Files concept.
So it wasn't just abstract sci-fi. It was tapping into something people were actually talking about, believing.
Precisely. It tapped into this pervasive anxiety, a real belief system for some, this fear that was already out there in the culture. It made the fantastic feel disturbingly plausible.
Because it reflected something a chunk of the population felt was real.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. It grounds it.
Exactly. And then, woven into all that, were Carter's own memories of Watergate.
Ah, okay. The government distrust angle.
Totally. That whole era, the early 70s, it just fostered this deep, pervasive sense of government distrust, conspiracy, suspicion of authority.
Hidden truths, cover-ups.
Yeah, and that historical context, that suspicion, it became the bedrock for the whole overarching mythology of the X-Files, where the biggest threat often wasn't the monster in the woods.
But guys in suits trying to hide it.
Exactly. The shadowy figures in power concealing the truth.
That blend, the real-world paranoia mixed with the supernatural, that's the magic, isn't it? Gives it that timeless feel.
It really does. But the framework itself, choosing the FBI, that was a very conscious, very strategic move.
Right, not just a random setting. Why the Bureau?
Well, Carter specifically chose the FBI to avoid what he saw as a flaw in Kolchak.
Okay.
In Kolchak, you had the same guy, Carl Kolchak, constantly bumping into weird stuff, often in the same city, which, after a while...
Stretches credibility a bit. How does one reporter find all the monsters?
Exactly. So by creating this fictional FBI unit actively seeking out paranormal cases, the X-Files, it provided a way more sustainable setup week after week without, as Carter put it, stretching the parameters of credibility.
Ah, so it gave them a built-in reason to be wherever the weirdness was happening.
Precisely. It offered a logical justification for Mulder and Scully always being on the front lines of the unexplained, moving around, new cases, official reason to investigate what everyone else discussed.
That's smart. Gave it scope, longevity.
Absolutely. But even with this brilliant mix of ideas, getting it on air wasn't simple, right? Our source says he hit some roadblocks.
Yeah, he did. Carter wrote the pilot script in '92, laid out his vision, but the first pitch to Fox, rejected.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, he had to go back, flesh it out more, refine things, then pitch it again a few weeks later before they finally commissioned it.
Shows you, even great ideas need that extra push sometimes.
Definitely. What's so fascinating, though, is how all these different threads, Kolchak, Twilight Zone, the alien abduction reports, Watergate, how they all came together into this coherent, really original vision.
Yeah, that blend of classic horror, real-world paranoia, government distrust. It really set it apart. Nothing else like it on TV then.
Which brings up a key question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How did they make sure this complex idea with all its nuances would actually work as a compelling TV show people would watch every single week?
And that leads us right into the absolute heart of it, the engine of the show, that core dynamic, the believer and the skeptic.
Yes. Mulder and Scully, it wasn't an accident, was it? Decided early on to build it around these two opposing forces.
Oh, completely intentional. It was the show's enduring genius. Fox Mulder, the believer, he was crafted with this incredibly powerful personal motivation.
His sister Samantha.
Exactly. Her disappearance when they were kids. He believes, absolutely believes, she was taken by aliens, and that trauma, that deep, unresolved loss. It wasn't just backstory.
It was everything. It drove him.
It was the absolute driving force behind his obsession with the X-Files. It fueled that relentless, sometimes reckless search for truth, made it personal, vulnerable.
That I Want to Believe poster?
Yeah.
It summed him up perfectly. It wasn't just random belief. It was rooted in that loss.
Precisely. Gave him that almost messianic quality sometimes. And then the perfect foil, Dana Scully, the skeptic.
Who was influenced by Clarice Starling, right, from Silence of the Lambs.
Directly influenced Jodie Foster's portrayal.
Yeah.
The creative team, Carter especially, they wanted Scully to seem real, grounded, intellectual.
Which meant pushing back against the studio. Because the network wanted something different.
Oh, yeah. The studio apparently wanted, and I quote, a bombshell character, someone to immediately inject romantic tension.
Ah, the typical network note.
Pretty much. But Carter insisted Scully's role was crucial. Provide the scientific, rational counterpoint to Mulder's intuitive leaps.
She was there to analyze the evidence, question the assumptions.
Offer the plausible scientific explanations, challenge the conspiracy theories, that constant push and pull between them. That was the show, the drama, the intellectual core.
And a really crucial decision defining their whole relationship was Carter insisting it stay platonic, wasn't it?
Absolutely critical.
He based them on Emma Peel and John Steed from the Avengers, right? That kind of partnership?
Yes. Where the wit and mutual respect were the focus, not overt romance. And that decision directly impacted casting, as we'll get into.
That feels so important. If you connect that to the bigger picture, that believer-skeptic dynamic, it's more than just character contrast, isn't it?
Oh, much more. It represents, really, the two fundamental ways we humans approach the unknown. Faith versus reason. Intuition versus empiricism.
Ah, okay. So the show could explore these huge ideas without picking a side.
Exactly. It allowed them to delve into complex philosophical stuff, belief, doubt, science, the paranormal, without ever fully saying this is the answer. It invited you, the viewer, into the debate.
Made you think critically.
Totally. And Carter's insistence on keeping the relationship platonic was, well, pre-revolutionary for TV then. He specifically mentioned moonlighting.
Right, the show where the ratings supposedly tanked after the leads got together.
He saw that as what not to do. He feared resolving the romantic tension would kill the spark. By keeping them partners, intellectual equals, fiercely loyal friends.
The focus stayed on the mission, their bond. Not just will they, won't they.
Exactly. And that unique appeal, that focus, contributed massively to the show's longevity. It was a brave choice.
It really was. Allowed for such a rich, deep partnership to develop over years. Okay, so beyond the story and characters, the look of the show, the feel, that was vital too.
Absolutely.
Carter worked with Daniel Sackheim, who'd done NYPD Blue. They drew inspiration from some interesting places, like that documentary, The Thin Blue Line.
Yes, and the British crime drama Prime Suspect.
Yeah.
Gritty, atmospheric stuff.
You can really see that in the early seasons, can't you? That moodiness, that sort of documentary realism almost.
You really can. The visual style was just as carefully crafted as the writing. The Thin Blue Line had that raw, unflinching realism. Prime Suspect brought that dark, grounded, procedural feel.
So X-Files fused those.
Yeah, and created something new. Instead of like flashy sci-fi effects all the time, they embraced stark lighting, deep shadows, those natural, often unsettling environments.
Like the forests.
Exactly. Anchoring the fantastical in this chilling, almost docu-style reality made the unbelievable feel disturbingly plausible. That noirish quality was key.
Told you the truth wasn't obvious. It was murky, hidden.
Right. Stood out from the brighter look of a lot of shows back then.
And that whole moody atmosphere got a huge boost from a big production decision, moving to Vancouver.
Oh, massively. Initially, they planned to shoot in L.A., but Carter's company, 1013 Productions, they just couldn't find the right locations, the variety they needed, around Hollywood.
Not enough creepy forests in L.A.
Apparently not. So they famously decided to go where the good forests are.
Vancouver,
British Columbia. And that move was pivotal. It shaped the show's entire visual identity for those first 5 seasons.
And it meant more work logistically, right? Needing extra location managers.
Yeah, our source mentions that. They needed 2 location managers instead of the usual one, which really highlights how much they prioritized finding those authentic atmospheric spots over just using sound stages.
Those sprawling forests, the mist, the gray skies.
It all became synonymous with the show. Vancouver provided the perfect, almost gothic backdrop for the unknown, gave it that immediate mood and scale.
So the takeaway for us watching, every spooky thog bank, every shadowy forest path, every moody, unsettling scene.
That was a direct result of choosing that location. It wasn't just convenience, it was integral to the show's DNA.
The environment became like another character.
Absolutely. Deepened the mystery, the atmosphere, in a way LA probably couldn't have.
Okay, moving on to the actors who brought these characters to life. Casting Mulder and Scully. That was obviously crucial. And not without challenges, especially for Mulder.
No, not straightforward at all. David Duchovny, who became Mulder, he was mostly doing films for about 3 years before X-Files.
Right.
His manager gave him the pilot script, and both of them thought it was really compelling, saw the potential, so he decided to audition.
And the audition went well. Source says terrific. But there was a funny little snag.
There was. Chris Carter apparently found Duchovny spoke rather slowly, and in a moment of kind of hilarious misjudgment.
He thought he wasn't bright.
Yeah, which is funny, right? Given Mulder's supposed to be this brilliant, obsessive guy. But Carter later realized Duchovny was actually one of the best-read, smartest people he knew. Shows how auditions can be misleading.
It really does. First impressions. Especially under pressure. Thankfully, the casting director was positive.
Very positive. And Carter, despite being contractually obligated to give Fox 2 choices for the role,
he knew Duchovny was the guy.
He was apparently confident right from the start, and his conviction paid off. Duchovny brought that quiet intensity, the intelligence, the dry humor. It was perfect for Mulder.
But Duchovny himself didn't think it would be a big deal.
Apparently not. He didn't think the show would last long or make much impact. Just another TV job, maybe.
Wow. Shows you never know when you're onto something huge.
Exactly. You just don't.
Okay, then there's Scully. And as we mentioned, the network had a very specific, very conventional idea of who should play her. And it wasn't Gillian Anderson.
No, it was classic studio versus creator. Fox execs wanted, as we heard, someone taller, leggier, blonder, and bustier.
Aiming for that immediate romantic spark again.
Pretty clearly. But Chris Carter dug his heels in. He insisted that Gillian Anderson, who was only 24, a theater actress with just a bit of minor film work,
He was the one.
he believed she had the intellectual weight, the subtle strength Scully needed. He fought for her, apparently even threatening to walk away if they didn't cast her.
Wow. He really believed in her.
Yeah.
And he resisted that network pressure for romance, citing moonlighting again.
He did. He understood that the unresolved tension, the intellectual partnership, was far more compelling long-term.
That dynamic, the creative vision versus network demands.
Yeah.
It's such a common story, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
But Carter's unwavering belief in his actors and his vision for that platonic relationship, it defined the show. It kept the focus on their shared mission, their evolving bond.
Not just romantic tropes, which was so refreshing.
Hugely refreshing. And it allowed those characters to grow in much richer ways over time.
And Anderson herself said it was a huge learning curve, being in front of the camera.
Yeah, she described it as a complete learning experience. Said the pilot was only the second time she'd ever been in front of a camera.
Which makes her performance even more impressive.
Yeah.
How poised she seemed.
Absolutely remarkable, really. Okay, so beyond the leads, Season 1 also started building out that vital supporting cast.
Right, the wider universe.
Yeah.
Like Walter Skinner.
Played by Mitch Pileggi. He became such a key figure recurring, then main cast, the conflicted assistant director.
And he was conceived as, what, quietly dynamic, playing against the paper pusher stereotype.
Exactly. A bureaucrat caught between the rules and the truth Mulder and Scully were chasing.
And the casting story there is funny too, right? He'd auditioned for other parts.
Yeah, unsuccessfully. Apparently because he'd been shaving his head, and Carter just couldn't picture him in those roles. But when he auditioned for Skinner, he was apparently in a grumpy mood, and he let his hair grow back.
And that look, that attitude, was perfect for Skinner.
Exactly. Carter thought he was just acting grumpy, but it fit. Pileggi later said he felt so lucky he didn't get those earlier one-off roles.
Because he would have missed out on Skinner.
Yeah, a career-defining part. Just goes to show. Serendipity in casting.
Totally. Pure Hollywood. And Season 1 introduced other crucial players too, right? Expanding the world.
Absolutely. We got our first glimpse of Deep Throat, Mulder's mysterious informant, played by Jerry Hardin.
Giving just enough info to keep things moving, raise the stakes.
Always increasing the paranoia. And of course, the main bad guy, the cigarette-smoking man.
William B. Davis. So chilling. Often just there, smoking, observing.
The embodiment of that conspiracy. And then the fan favorites, the lone gunman.
Byers, Frohike, and Langley. The paranoid hacker trio. First seen in EBE.
Yeah, they brought humor, but also that deep, slightly unhinged knowledge. Became hugely popular.
So popular they got their own spin-off later, which is pretty rare.
Very rare for supporting characters introduced so early. And the season also introduced Scully's family, her dad, her mom.
Grounding her character a bit more, giving her that personal life outside the basement office.
Exactly. Showed the human behind the science.
So the big picture here, even casting had its own weird twists. It just shows how vital character development and casting were right from the start.
Absolutely. Laying the groundwork for this rich, complex universe. These weren't just throwaway characters, they were building blocks.
Okay, so let's talk about the stories themselves. When you watch X-Files, especially early on, you notice those two distinct kinds of episodes.
Right. The two tracks running side by side.
And our sources confirm that was a very conscious choice. Key to the show's structure and longevity.
Definitely. It's one of the show's most sophisticated narrative moves. Initially, they weren't sure how long the show would run. No guarantee, especially on Fox back then.
So no grand multi-season plan from day one.
Not really. And the creative team felt quite smartly that the show couldn't just be about alien abductions every single week.
Right, that initial pilot concept. It might get old.
Could lead to repetition, audience fatigue. They needed to branch out.
Which led to the Monster of the Week.
Exactly. Those standalone stories. Featuring all sorts of diverse monsters, supernatural creatures, genetic anomalies, weird government experiments, things often unrelated to the main alien plot.
Gave them huge creative freedom, didn't it?
Immense freedom. Allowed writers to explore horror, sci-fi, psychological thrillers. Think about Squeeze, Eugene Victor Toombs.
Oh God, Toombs.
What?
Still creepy, the liver-eating mutant.
Profoundly creepy, instantly iconic, set a high bar for episodic horror, or Ice with the Arctic space worms causing paranoia.
Like the thing on TV. Taut, briskly paced.
Yeah, or Eve with the creepy engineer twins. Delving into eugenics, these standalones kept the show fresh, unpredictable, prevented it from getting stuck in a rut.
But then towards the end of season 1, things started shifting. They began building that bigger story.
Yeah, the mythology started to take shape, slowly, piece by piece, like this intricate puzzle.
The cigarette-smoking man became more prominent.
Definitely introduced as the primary antagonist, that shadowy force pulling strings. And Mulder's sister, Samantha, her disappearance became the central theme.
Explored in the pilot, Conduit, Miracle Man. It was the personal anchor.
Made his whole quest deeply emotional, and that mythology really solidified in the season finale, the Erlenmeyer Flask.
Which was nominated for an Edgar Award, right? A writing award.
It was. And it was a game changer. Packed with reveals, alien-human hybrids, government experiments, and written, interestingly, before they even knew if they'd get a season 2.
Wow, that's gold.
Yeah.
Because it ended on a huge cliffhanger.
Massive. The X-Files unit shut down, Mulder and Scully reassigned, separated, their fates totally up in the air.
Left audiences desperate for more. Smart move.
Very smart. That balance, the standalones and the mythology, it was brilliant storytelling. Explored all kinds of weirdness, but also built this compelling, bigger narrative.
Prevented stagnation.
Yeah.
Kept you guessing.
Right,
About the case of the week and the big truth.
Exactly. It offered something for everyone. Casual viewers and dedicated fans trying to connect the dots.
It really did keep you hooked. And while aliens were core, Season 1 went way beyond UFOs, didn't it? Explored all sorts of unexplained phenomena.
Oh, yeah. Showcased incredible thematic variety right from the start. Proved its ambition. For instance, you had several episodes touching on soul transference or reincarnation.
Shadows, Born Again, Lazarus.
Right. Though the source does note some critics felt those plots were maybe a bit too similar. Early days, finding their feet, perhaps.
Fair enough. But then you had completely different stuff, too.
Totally. Ghost in the Machine,
Yeah.
Killer AI, classic sci-fi territory, dangers of tech, shapes, werewolves, Native American folklore focus, the first of several like that.
And Beyond the Sea. That one really stood out.
Remarkably chilling and so clever structurally because it reversed their roles. Scully, grieving her dad, starts believing this death row psychic.
While Mulder is the skeptic, demanding proof.
Yeah. Broke their established dynamic brilliantly. Explored their characters, belief, grief. Really powerful stuff.
It really was. And director Daniel Sackheim said something interesting, that X-Files didn't have a confined style.
Yeah.
That everyone tried to make a little scary movie.
And you feel that right. Each episode often had its own distinct tone, its own flavor of scary. It allowed for so much experimentation.
Even if experiments sometimes went sideways, like space.
Ah, yes, space. Carter wrote it, intended it as a bottle episode, cheap, contain one location mostly.
Right, save some money.
But ironically, it ended up being the most expensive episode of season 1. Cost overruns, early CGI challenges maybe.
Yes.
Shows how things can go wrong.
So much for saving money. But that diversity, exploring everything from ghosts to AI to werewolves, why so broad, so early?
I think it speaks to the show's core ambition. Explore the entire spectrum of the unexplained, not just aliens. Gave writers freedom, kept things fresh, ensured they wouldn't run out of mysteries.
Okay, so looking at the whole creative team, this wasn't just Chris Carter working alone, was it? It was a huge collaborative effort.
Oh, absolutely. Carter was the showrunner, the guiding vision, wrote 9 episodes himself, including the pilot and finale. Crucial stuff.
But he had a powerhouse team.
He really did. Co-executive producers Glenn Morgan and James Wong, absolute legends, wrote 6 episodes, hugely influential on the early mythology, introduced the lone gunman.
Their episodes often had that darker psychological edge, right? Squeeze Beyond the Sea.
Exactly. Then you had supervising producers Alex Gansa and Howard Gordon. Wrote 5 together. Gordon co-wrote another with Carter. Key players in developing the conspiracy stuff, often bringing that sharper political edge.
And a bunch of other writers contributing, too.
Yeah, Larry and Paul Barber, Chris Ruppenthal, Kenneth Biller and Chris Brancato, Scott Coffer, Marilyn Osborne. A real writer's room bringing different voices, but all working within that established tone.
And the directors were just as important for that signature look.
For sure. David Nutter directed the most, 6 episodes in season 1, really helped establish that visual language, the mood.
Daniel Sackheim, who helped develop the pilot, directed a couple, too.
Yep. And Gerald Friedman, William Graham, Michael Lange, Joe Napolitano, Larry Shaw. They all directed 2 each bringing their own cinematic touch to those little starry movies.
And we shouldn't forget Robert Mandel, who directed the pilot itself, set the initial tone.
Foundational work. And significantly, R.W. Goodwin, who was a producer on the series, he directed the season finale, The Erlenmeyer Flask.
His first time directing for the show.
Yep. Shows the trust in the in-house team for those crucial mythology episodes.
So the bigger picture, X-Files was built by this diverse team, this shared vision, not just one person.
Exactly. A collaborative symphony, especially across a huge 24-episode season, meant the creative engine was always firing, always pushing, delivering mysteries that felt both unique and part of the whole.
Okay, so creative process, characters, stories, check. What about the reaction, the numbers? How did audiences take to this weird, dark show on Friday nights?
You know, surprisingly well right out of the gate. Especially for Fox, which was still finding its feet. The pilot episode, watched by 7.4 million households.
That's pretty good for a new Friday show.
Yeah, 15% of the audience at the time. A really solid start.
But it wasn't all uphill from there. The ratings dipped a bit.
They did. Our source mentions its lead-in show, The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr.
Ah, the sci-fi western. Bruce Campbell.
That's the one. When its ratings started to falter, X-Files felt it too. Lead-ins are important.
So X-Files hit a low point mid-season.
Yeah, with the episode Fallen Angel, only 5.1 million households watched that one.
But, crucially, after that low point, the numbers started climbing again.
Steadily rose. Which shows the series was building its own audience, its own momentum, independent of the lead-in. People were seeking it out.
Word of mouth, maybe.
Probably. And it peaked with the finale, The Erlenmeyer Flask. That big cliffhanger episode pulled in 8.3 million households, 16% of the audience, a significant jump.
So overall for the season, where did it rank?
Officially, it ranked 105th out of 128 shows for the 1993-94 season, which sounds low.
But for Fox back then, that was enough.
It was enough to be labeled a cult hit, meaning maybe not massive numbers, but the audience it did have was fiercely loyal, highly engaged. And that's gold for a network building its brand.
So it built its audience organically, through buzz and loyalty, not just initial hype.
Exactly. A testament to unique storytelling, finding its passionate niche.
Fascinating. Okay, what about the critics? Did they get it? Did they appreciate this weird blend of genres?
Generally, yes. Reviews were largely positive right from the start. Critics call it things like the most paranoid, subversive show on TV.
High praise.
Yeah. They noted the writing was fresh without being self-conscious. It wasn't trying too hard. Aggregators back this up. Rotten Tomatoes, 83% based on 35 reviews.
Solid.
The consensus there notes the serious approach helped establish it as genuinely creepy sci-fi, not just camp. Metacritic scored it 70 out of 100, generally favorable reviews. Good going for a new genre show.
So they saw its quality, its seriousness early on. Any specific episodes critics loved?
Oh yeah. Squeeze was consistently called profoundly creepy benchmark monster episode. Ice, the Arctic one, praised as taut and briskly paced. Great tension.
And Beyond the Sea, the Scully-centric one.
Described as remarkably chilling, praised for its character depth. These really showed the show's potential early on.
But like any first season, not every episode was a home run with the critics.
No, definitely some misses or divisive ones. Space, despite costing a fortune, some found decidedly unscary.
And maybe tasteless, touching on the Challenger disaster.
Yeah, that was a criticism. The Jersey Devil was called pretty silly by some. Maybe too much like a standard monster movie.
And those reincarnation-type episodes. Shadows, Born Again, Roland.
So even the criticisms highlight that experimental nature. Pushing boundaries, sometimes missing, but always learning.
Exactly. Finding its footing.
And this early buzz wasn't just reviews. It got awards recognition too, right? Pretty quickly. It did. Early industry validation. 2 Primetime Emmy nominations for Season 1. Mark Snow, the composer, nominated for that amazing main title theme music.
Instantly recognizable. Haunting.
Totally. And the title designers, Bruce Bryant, James Castle, Carol Johnson, they actually won the Emmy for outstanding graphic design and title sequences.
Wow. An early win, signaling its unique visual impact.
Really significant. And that wasn't all, was it? Something even bigger.
The Golden Globe.
Yes. The X-Files won the Golden Globe for Best Television Series Drama for the 1994 season. Now, that covered parts of Season 1 and early Season 2.
But still huge recognition early on.
Massive. Cemented it as a major dramatic series, not just niche sci-fi. Put it on the map as prestige TV, really. Announced it was a force to be reckoned with.
And one last piece of evidence for its immediate impact, the DVD release. Came out relatively quickly for the time, didn't it?
Yeah. The X-Files, the complete first season hit shelves in May 2000 in the U.S., only about 6 years after the season aired.
And it was packed with stuff, wasn't it? Not just the episodes.
Oh, incredibly packed for an early DVD set. All 24 episodes on 7 discs, sure, but also a documentary, The Truth About Season 1. Chris Carter commentaries on 12 episodes.
About half the season.
Special effects clips, a deleted scene from the pilot, behind-the-scenes spots, TV promos, trivia, web links, even DVD-ROM games.
That's extensive, especially back then.
It really was. Offered fans that deep dive long before streaming extras were common.
So what does that tell us? That DVD release, packed like that.
It just underscores the immediate, profound impact. Fans were hungry for this stuff, wanted to own it, explore it, proved it was more than a show. It was a phenomenon right from the start.
Absolutely. Okay, so wrapping up. We've taken a pretty deep dive into the foundational first season of The X-Files.
We really have, from Chris Carter's eclectic inspirations, Kolchak, Watergate, those alien abduction stats,
to the crucial casting of Mulder and Scully and that commitment to their platonic partnership.
The smart balance of Monster of the Week thrills and that slowly unfolding mythology.
And how audiences and critics reacted, turning it from this quirky Friday night show into a genuine cult hit, and setting the stage for everything that followed.
Yeah, laying the groundwork for a true pop culture giant.
So, you should now have a really solid grasp of how this groundbreaking series started, the creative forces involved, and why it hit such a nerve with viewers right away.
It's clear Season 1 wasn't just a beginning. It was like the blueprint for this whole unique storytelling machine.
Redefined the genre, influenced so many shows afterward.
Absolutely. And as we've seen, The X-Files, it constantly defied expectations, built this incredibly passionate following.
Almost obsessive.
Totally. And it influenced countless supernatural dramas, conspiracy thrillers. It taught us, to question things, to look deeper, embrace the unknown.
And always keep searching for the truth, no matter how elusive or dangerous.
Exactly. The truth is out there.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listener. We live in this era of, information overload, right? Facts are debated, skepticism is everywhere.
It's hard to know what to believe sometimes.
So the question is, in this noisy world, what truth are you still out there looking for?